You're having a tequila passion fruit.
Cheers.
I have mezcal with grapefruit and yuzu. Cheers.
It tastes fresh, like as if I just had a bartender mix this together.
Thank you.
That's what it tastes like. Yeah.
That's what it is. Like we want to bring a craft cocktail experience in a can to people because how easy is to every night go to a cocktail bar. First of all, there are not that many cocktail bars.
Yeah.
Second, if you want to go on the weekend, it's busy, it's freaking expensive, right? My main first project was a art-inspired hospitality project. This is an art-inspired hospitality project, literally, right?
Right.
And I think alcohol in an artistic, cool way that ties into a proper social experience is probably one of the key elements.
Guys, welcome back to another episode of Unconventional. Today's guest is Kam. How do I say your last name?
Tabarai.
Tabarai. Kam Tabarai.
I don't even say my own last name, honestly.
Yeah. Kam T.
Kam the Bootleggers. There we go.
There you go. Welcome to the podcast,
Thank you.
man.
Thank you.
We have a ritual where we shake hands.
I like it. I like shaking hands. I'm a hugger, shaking hands, all the touchy-feely stuff all the way.
I'm very much the same way. So I think from my research, you've actually got quite an interesting backstory even prior to Bootleggers. But Bootleggers is like the visual. It's like what I see up front. So if I go on your today, when I go on your Instagram, when I go on social media, this is what I see. So naturally, this being part of your branding, I think it's appropriate that we start with the
Bootleggers.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Should we do that?
Absolutely. Everybody says Bootleggers. So the proper way to start would be, you want a little kick with espresso martini, you want a nice tropical feeling, or you want something a little nice and boozy to kick it in. That's your choice.
Yeah. So I get to pick.
You got to pick.
I get to pick. So
or choose based on the art.
I had half a cup of coffee. So if I have any more caffeine, I'm gonna
die. All right. I would say, you know what? Let's go with the people pleaser.
Yeah.
This is the people pleaser. We call it the Phoenix Feather. Is basically like a passion fruit margarita almost. Is tequila with, give it a quick 2-second shake. Good enough.
Boom.
And the reason we do that is because there's real ingredients in it. So, the same way that they, I'll do the one.
Yeah, you got to do one too. Yeah.
The same way that, you got cold pressed juice and it deposits after a few minutes of sitting. That's the same thing. You just bring it back to life because there's real fruit in it. Right. You're having a tequila passion fruit.
Cheers.
I have mezcal with grapefruit and yuzu. Cheers. It's good, man. I don't know. I don't know if this is okay to do this, but this is fantastic. How is it?
We're gonna do. It's awesome, man.
Now, anything else you've ever had in a can? How do you feel after this?
Oh man, this is like
doesn't taste the same, right?
It tastes fresh,
right?
Like as if I just had a bartender mix this together.
Thank you.
That's what it tastes like. Yeah,
that's what it is.
Like I'm not kidding. You guys can't feel what I'm feeling in my mouth, but there's like texture to this. Like it almost. That's why the shake.
That's why the shake is real. There's real passion fruit. The fruit actually juiced with actual mango and actual lime juice, and of course cane sugar syrup. Same way we make a cocktail. The whole pitch behind Bootleggers is on the product side is that we want to bring a craft cocktail experience in a can to people because how easy is to every night go to a cocktail bar. First of all, there are not that many cocktail bars.
Yeah.
Second, if you want to go on the weekend, it's busy, it's freaking expensive, right? And there's no other choice, So we basically, because of the way alcohol is regulated and the society in the retail market is governed, we basically are okay with drinking shit all our life, right?
Yeah.
We pay $150 to go to a gala to get in a cup vodka soda with the shittiest vodka for $25, and we're okay with it. How are we okay with it, right? I wasn't okay with it, so I did this.
You saw the problem and you solved that problem in the industry. So, I want to talk about Bootlegger, and I think we're going to go into detail. I just wanted to start with the sip because that's the way to. It's the way to get. It's the way to get it started. But I want to talk about your backstory before the Bootlegger. Okay, so this is what you have to approve.
Of course.
So I was doing my research. Usually Karan does all the research, but I figured if I'm going to be here, tell me.
Absolutely.
Is this you?
That is me. That is very
That is you. Can we pull that up on
100%.
So when I see all the Instagram, like I said, social media presence, this is what caught me by surprise.
Absolutely.
So
It was at UBC. I was doing my master's degree in electrical engineering. That's how I moved to Canada back in almost 15 years ago now, right?
Yeah.
And this was every student, because I was part of a lab who, I was doing a research program. I had some scholarship to the research program. My professor was paying me like an employee basically to do research as part of my study. And in the lab that we all masters and PhD students, after the first semester, once you're good and you're doing, we were helping with we were doing, what do you call it? The person who helps with the course, but is not the professor.
Oh, TA.
TA, yes,
TA,
teacher
yeah.
assistant, right? So I was TA, and everybody that's you're a TA, you have the list of courses there, so students could go look you up. So I had a page. That was my first own page, professional page.
This is
right?
you.
That was me. Yeah.
And so the reason I wanted to bring this up, because if you're familiar with Kam, if you've seen him at his gala, his events, or you've heard of him through Bootlegger or on his YouTube, like you're pretty active on social media. This is not what you'd expect.
No.
Like, and not that I doubted you, Kam, but I was like, man, this guy's smart. This guy's.
It's a secret little thing that I don't like to. It's funny because when I was an engineer and in that world, we're all nerds, right? In that world, and I have my nerdy side as well, but I'm also very social, right? Personality-wise, so that was the trigger for me that I couldn't stand it anymore. At some point, I had to break through and do my thing, be in the environment that I thrive and all that socially. But, as much as, and I think I was book smart or math smart, I was smart enough to be able to obviously finish a master's degree at UBC, right? But it wasn't my trigger of life, right? So then I tried to separate myself from that. And even if I can hide that story for a while, to not get people to judge me, because I felt at some point on a social level, people were judging engineers by like, hey, this guy's a nerd. You want to go on a date? Girls who see, it's funny, I just say that as a joke, but there's reality behind it, right?
It's totally
that
true.
If you're a girl and you see an engineer is coming forward for a date, it feels like, maybe he's got a good job, he's smart, so my family's gonna like it. So right away you go to like, oh, I'm married with children, right? And then on the same token, you just remove fun and excitement and being that guy from your scenarios in your head when you accept that date.
Right.
So I was going to go the opposite and say, I don't want to be identified like that when I ask somebody out, when I go out, present myself somewhere. So when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I was already my engineering had already been shifted to insurance industry, but I was still an engineer in insurance industry for a couple of years. So that was my first layer of separating myself. And then when I did the full switch, I was bartending, right? I was back in the hospitality industry because I was my main first project was a art-inspired hospitality project. This is an art-inspired hospitality project, literally, right?
Right.
As well. But it was like physical space. I was opening a cafe bar restaurant that was like an art gallery with different themes. It was fantastic, right? But I was in the industry. I was bartending. If I was asking somebody on a date, I'll be, I'm a bartender, I'm a mixologist, and I'm doing a project.
Right.
Never said I'm an engineer or something. But then somebody would realize that they would be surprised in a pleasant way.
Yeah.
Then he would not have that nerdy tag on it, right?
They're like, Kam, you're too smart for this. There's something not adding up here.
But it's good. It's not something I'm proud of it, obviously.
Dude,
I'm proud
awesome.
of everything what I've done in life.
I think it gives you so much credibility.
But I don't want to rely on it until it's
sure.
needed. I wanted to make it, if I'm growing as a bartender, as a mixologist, as an entrepreneur, I did not want to reveal that backstory until it's needed.
100%.
Because I got to be recognized by what I do in that exact moment and in that time. And I think it worked to a great extent. But I'm an engineer, full-on engineer. I worked as an engineer for 10 years. I had my P-Eng and everything. I worked from government to private, everything.
Right. So what's cool is when I do go into your social media, I almost see none of that side. So when I found that, I was like, this is interesting. I'm going to press on him a little bit.
Well, how many engineering social media things you've seen, right?
Yeah,
it's not a very social media-able thing.
Yeah, or how many engineers go into entrepreneurship or even...
They do, but then again, in their own way.
Exactly, in the engineering realm, right?
Yeah, you don't go start a cleaning company like all of a sudden, for example.
So for you, when did the passion for cocktails really start? Because if I go back to your social media, I go back to the first picture, and it's a picture of a drink.
Even when I was an engineer, right?
Even when you're an engineer,
funny?
yeah.
That's a good research. Well done. I got to give you credit.
I was like, I'm meeting with an engineer. I got to be prepared.
Yeah, right. So funny enough, I think, part of an entrepreneurial journey, let me step back first and make it a generalized thing first before I connect it to myself. I think everybody every entrepreneurial journey has a big component of self-awareness and self-development. If you don't know yourself, you can't risk everything you've done in life to go after your passion. That the first requirement, 101, is that you got to know yourself. You got to be very aware. You got to understand who you are, what triggers you, what's your personality type, and how are you happy? How do you relate to other people? How do other people see you? All of that cool, spiritual stuff, whether you want to call it a spiritual self-development, all sorts of wellness, this, that, whatever you want to call it, right? I don't name things because everybody takes a side of it and starts a niche and they call it all of them. They're all amazing. I'm in favor of all of that. I have friends in all those communities and I go to them as well here and there. But I'm not any of them per se. Sure. I have my own way of things in life and I didn't try to preach it to people, but one day I'm going to probably preach it to people too. Yeah. If it worked for me, maybe it worked for other people. So as I was growing up, when I moved here, I was 22, right? I moved here to go to UBC for a master's degree because that was my ticket to leave Iran, right? I mean, Iran, as we all know, is an amazing, beautiful country, but, it's tough to live there. It's the reality of life, especially if you don't grow up like me in a super tight religious type of family, traditional family. Like my family, since I was a child, was trying to immigrate to Canada, actually, funny enough. Right? Weren't successful. So, when I had a chance, absolutely, I would pave the way, whatever way I can to get out of it. And that was an easy way. Engineering and continuing studies for Canada was an easy way. So I did that and I liked engineering. I mean, I was very always fascinated by how everything exists. For me, it's physics behind it more than math. Right. For a lot of people, it's math maybe, but I love the physics. I love to discover why is this light, why is this happening? Why do we have electricity, right? I was always fascinated. How does a camera work? Right? I always wanted to learn that. So that's why I became an engineer. But then beside that, on a personal level, since I was a child, I was always social. I love the whole to be, within a social environment, mingle, talk. I talk a lot, obviously, as you can see. And I love to, talk about different things, present stuff. And I love the attention on the receiving end as well. And when I was a teenager, I think, I started having always this glamorous birthday parties. That was my thing. My project of the year was, I want to have a great birthday party, right? And it's basically have a party, have an event. And there was a lot of, now that I look back at it in my self-awareness process, I realized that was totally dictated by my personality. I love the social settings. I wanted to make people happy. Right. And get a credit. That would make me happy to see I made the change. If I influence people for a little better feeling through a nice, fun, social interaction, that would give me so much happiness. That would actually give me fulfillment, which is the prerequisite to happiness is fulfillment. And to that extent, I always wanted to do this in a way, right? And I was doing it anyways. When I moved to Canada, I was, on my own 22, second semester at UBC, the Department of Continuing Studies, especially engineering, masters and PhD is as nerdy as it can be, right? So I needed a social thing beside it. So the second semester I went to the university pub and started getting a job as a barback and bartender. And it was I loved it so much. I loved cleaning the freaking table because it was such a big social interaction. And then the off shifts when I was getting a chance to bartend, you're like the king of the castle. Right. It's just nothing like it, right? And you're in control. It's fun. People are having fun. People are crying for their exams outside. They're coming inside. They're having fun. How great, right? And in that process, I discovered alcohol as the lubricant of the social experiment when, it loosens people up, it drops the guard. And I very quickly got triggered by that. And I started thinking about, I want to really grow on that social aspect of life. And I think alcohol in an artistic, cool way that ties into a proper social experience is probably one of the key elements. So I started learning bartending and mixology and making cocktails. And throwing a lot of parties, house parties. I would go to other people's parties. I would get invited to make drinks. And I was thinking every friend of mine that knows me from the moment I moved to Canada knows me with a cocktail in a party and in that moment. This is the memory everybody has of me, regardless of nobody has memory of me as an engineer, right? I was a great freaking engineer. I had 6-figure salary. Nobody remembers me that, right? But everybody remembers me by the social side of it. When I called my friends after I started changing my life and started my entrepreneurial journey and said, hey, I'm actually going to quit. I have a plan and this. I want to open a bar or the hospitality artistic project and all that. 90% of my friends, the answer was like, or the first thing they said was, finally, good. Nobody
Really?
said, why are you doing this? Are you crazy? Very little. My mother said, are you crazy? Right? Obviously, it's a mother, right?
Hold on. I gotta stop there because I talk about that a lot on the show. You're saying people, when you told your friends about it, they said, finally?
Yeah, they said, finally. Yeah, we all been waiting for you to do this, right?
No way.
To that level, right? So when something's right, it's
I'm
right.
so happy to hear that because I feel like every other entrepreneur gets you're crazy for doing this. Don't you dare. You're not cut out for this. Like, are you sure you want to do this?
I mean, I would getting those as well, like the concerns from but like the first attitude, like the general attitude was good.
Right.
We expected this. Nothing unusual, right? it was just a matter of time to come.
Right.
Of course, then they get the concern. Are you sure about this? Or this, like
of course.
The good things that as a friend or a family somebody does for you, right? I just want to make sure you're not crazy or something. But yeah, it was really meant to be. So that was the click of it when I was in university, right? And I really
how old were you
discovered
at the time?
22, 3, right? Basically.
Okay.
Yeah. I moved here before my 22nd birthday.
Yeah.
Which is in September. So it was exactly the start of a school season,
right?
And this is within the first year of a school, literally, right? And then I got a job before I finished my school. Like it was a 2-year program. I finished after a year and a few months. Like I was still doing my thesis. I got a job and I didn't even tell my supervisor because he didn't let me get a job. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get the job and not tell you. And I did that. And he didn't realize until today. And I got a job and started working and, I finished my thesis. And then I was in a work environment in a very old school company that was owned by BC Hydro. It's called Power Tech Lab. It was a great company. It was like a mad scientist dream in a way, but, a mad scientist dream in the 70s.
Right.
Not in 2020, right?
Right.
So everybody's like at the retirement age. They're all like these like testing facilities for like heavy equipment, for like heavy electrical equipment. I was a utility engineer. And, it's like rough, like it's very like in super industrial, heavy industry, right? But then it was very interesting from the scientific industrial side of it.
Sure.
And I had this like twist between, I kind of like this, but on the social end and the lifestyle, it sucks. Like I'm going to somewhere in Surrey, not the good part of Surrey. It was like in Nordell Way and Scott Road, not the best
That's
part.
like right around where I live, but yeah.
But like there's like an area that is like sketchy and like you can walk in.
You're talking about Newton.
Yeah. And like, so, I'm trying to resist. I still live in Vancouver. I lived in Vancouver at the time. I took the commute every day for 8 years, right? And, but I survived it. I started traveling. I started partying and I was growing as an engineer. I was disrupting the company.
Right.
I disrupted the company. I was in the most money-making group of the company, which was like a little isolated island in the facility. And had a lot of pride in this matter, right? This new CEO comes to the company with the change movement and all that. The first thing I do, I'm going to him and was like, I need to change. You need to change. Everything needs to change. This is ridiculous. I can't be, in an environment where everybody's 75 years old. You got to bring young people. You got to let young people to grow and move around and experience life. And he was trying to do that anyways because he was a sharp guy with an MBA coming to here with a lot of industrial experience too. And I seized the opportunity and I grew in that company very fast, right? In the 8 years that I was there, I traveled to half United States with that company and I made my own group. I made my own, business development team and I had technical team. I had my own clients. I was going on these conferences that I had forced the company to send me. Otherwise, I said, I'm quitting. If you don't approve this, I quit. Like I made value for myself to be irreplaceable a little bit. And then I did that, right? And it was great. I left a mark in that company. My clients were crying when I left and I said, I'm quitting and I'm going to insurance industry. The guy was like, they were offering me jobs. Like, do you want to come work for our company? Because how are we going to do this if you're not there, right?
Right.
And I was triggered to one of them. It was a startup company in San Francisco. And amazing people actually, and I never did it. And I'm happy I didn't do it because I needed to do what I do, right? But
I really what I really appreciate about your journey is that you were winning in the engineering world.
I did.
You were doing well. You were crushing it. You just had a calling for something else, and I guess that's when you made that transition.
And exactly, I was getting there, right? That towards the end of my first engineering career in that 8 years, I was really doing really well. like 2 weeks before I left that company, I got the biggest raise in the history of BC Hydro companies. Like 25% raise. Nobody gets a 25% raise in the government. Government has frozen salaries for years and stuff. Like it's a thing. And I left 2 weeks after because it wasn't about money. Like it's not, I mean, look, if you have a corporate job and you make $5 million a month, keep it.
Yeah.
I would keep it. I'm not crazy. But $150,000 is not that much money anymore, right? I mean, and then it doesn't grow after that. Corporate life is like this. So like you go up and then that's it.
Plateau, yeah.
Now the whole world is going, the cost is going like this for the next 50 years. You're never going to catch up, right? So then you have to start doing things on the side and, playing, maybe get married to save money. Like that's terrible, right? And that people move in together to save money. I don't think it's a horrible thing. It's the worst thing is to sacrifice your own space and your existence by force of that nature rather than moving in with somebody because you love them, because you want to be with that person for the rest of your life rather than, no, we're moving in because we want to save on rent.
Yeah.
Is that just mind-blowing, man?
Yeah.
I'd rather be homeless than doing that, honestly.
Dude, I love your honesty. Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. And then, but you're totally right. Like I have friends that have worked at companies for 5 years, 10 years, and they've hit that plateau that you're talking about, and they're too scared to leap. Yeah. And I tell them every time, like, dude, like the money will come and go. Like, are you happy doing what you're doing? And if the answer is no, are you fulfilled?
Right.
If the answer is no, then like you got to leave. You got to find your happiness. Right? Like no one's going to find it for you.
You know what's the problem? They haven't found what is it that makes them happy. So that's the other thing. Self-awareness, self-knowledge is the prerequisite to every change. You got to know who you are, right?
For sure.
So in that whole journey, it was a great journey. Before that, as soon as I had my full-time job confirmed, I started traveling. That's the best thing I ever did in life. I say that out loud to everybody. I spent down payment of 5 houses in my 20s traveling. I could have had 5 houses. I could be built with multimillionaire right now if I had them and flipped them.
Right.
But I didn't do it. I traveled and I'm broke, right? And I have a business that is thriving.
Right.
But look what I can achieve.
For sure.
By my existence, right? I can make a change in the world. That's far more better than having, a potential $2 million through 5 houses for me. Not for everybody, right? But for me.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing I did in my life was starting traveling in my 20s early. And I traveled the way I wanted. I didn't get to, I travel sometimes with friends, sometimes with family, sometimes myself. A lot more with myself and a couple of candid people that, were my vibe. And when I traveled, I started exploring life through the lens of what's happening in that place, right? Let's go deep down into experience. People have different life experiences in different places, right? Part of life experience is the routine. But the real life experience that forms a culture, forms happiness, forms triggers, forms influence is what happens after the work, right? When you go out, when you go for a drink, when you go on a date, when you go to a concert, when you go to vacation, right? When you go chill, when you have a day off, right? Nobody ever comes and tries to sell you something out of their routine life because it's not attractive. Why it's not attractive? Because it is not attractive, because it's boring, because it's something you do by force for money. And if you remove that, that is funny enough, more than 70% of your conscious life. I mean, again, sleeping is conscious as well, but it's not, you're not super conscious about it when you're not awake. But on the awake time of your life, you spend more than 70% of it at your work and you hate it and you don't talk about it and you don't want to live that life. How do you do that?
For sure.
Have you asked that question?
Yeah, a lot of people, like, unless you're an entrepreneur, most people don't ask that question.
But they feel it.
For sure they feel it.
Right?
I know, because I've had these conversations, but they don't want to talk about it.
They don't want to talk about it.
I've read lots of books and I've gone kind of similar in the entrepreneurship space. I found the word that describes this. 2 words. Sleeping awake. Like, you go through the motions of life. You're awake, but are you really awake? Are you really conscious? Are you really focused? Are you really present?
Yeah.
And that's where those realizations came from me, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's a really good term, actually. I love it.
Sleeping awake, yeah.
Sleeping awake. It's crazy. So, that's where you find the real people. That's why you can connect with people.
For sure.
Right? Sometimes alcohol is involved. Sometimes, recreational drugs are involved or whatever. Sometimes just music. Sometimes it's scenery. Sometimes the beach, right?
For sure.
Nothing more than nature and environment and design and lighting and all that creates a proper connection for an influence and for an experience, right? It's not always alcohol or drugs or whatever. I mean, this is a trigger.
For sure.
Right? But what I've tried to do when we get there is trying to use the trigger itself as an experience. So which adds a lot more to the big experience itself, right? But eventually, everything is about an experience. Everything is about a trigger, an influence, right? So I try to discover life in that model in different places. And then I got a chance, and I enforced it in my work as well, to start traveling. So I was traveling every month almost to a, we had these like committee group meetings, technical committee group meetings in the US with my customers of utility industry. Every month or every 2 months, it would be somewhere in the Southeast for the most part. I would go Monday to Wednesday to those. Thursday is a full day of traveling back. I would take Friday off, 1 day off. I would take a one-way flight on Thursday, somewhere I want to go in the US for the most part. I would extend, so with 1 day off and one-way trip and 2-3 nights of hotel, I have a full vacation. And then my flight back is paid for, right? Because I had to come back home anyway, and 1 day off. And I did that. I milked that shit, man. Like I milked it so much. I probably in 2 years, I went 20 times in different places in the US for those meetings, and some of those places were themselves amazing.
You were traveling for work.
For work, yeah. And then I would take that 1 day off at the end of the week. And on rotation, I would be a lot going between Miami, LA, and Vegas, right? Because I love those places. There's a lot of art, entertainment, party music, different things in it. And and people, like I love people. I love big city vibe. I love, an environment that people, you feel the energy in these places, right? You go to LA, I mean, that's where our business is growing in LA now. Is like there are people who are thriving on a daily basis, aggressively going after their targets and goals, and in a vibe, within a vibe that is about fun, experience, art, something that is fulfilling, something is not just money with walls and, blocks like real estate, but it affects your soul. Right. It affects your existence. It elevates your being at any given moment, right? Owning a house does not elevate your being spiritually, right? But feeling content because of having a bite of food that is, so satisfying, that triggers all these senses, but that's transformative, right? A bite of a food could be transformative spiritually, right? It's like, it's a very interesting things. And I've experienced all of this, right? Through these travels, to close the loop on that, I literally experienced life through senses, through taste buds, through eyesight, through listening, through, the generic, coherent experience of music, art, venue, place, beach, lighting, sun, all of that. And the people, of course. People are a critical point of this whole experience, right? But if you trigger your senses at the right frequency in a harmonized model, that all of them are triggered when they're paired together, like everything is like harmonized, then you get a resonance frequency, right? You got a resonance. Out of the resonance, what you feel is an exaggerated peak of an experience. You get that goosebump feeling that is so fulfilling that you feel like, ooh, if I died right now, I don't think I will have any regrets. I'm like so content. I'm so fulfilled. It was such a big shock of pleasure and spiritual fulfillment that I'm like, I'm going to die. I'm happy. Like, let's kill me, right? Yeah. We all get those feelings here and there.
For sure, yeah.
I've got so many of those feelings in life, right? That there was one day that I felt, on its own, more of this is not going to trigger me anymore. I need to share this with people. I need to influence people and actually give them this because, it's not about me anymore. I felt it. I think everybody else should feel this because if you feel this, you're not going to go start a war tomorrow anymore. Right. Because it's all about how you feel, how you are. And you know what? I use art, entertainment, cocktail, alcohol as the filter to give people this experience.
It's almost like the bridge.
It's a bridge. But behind the scenes, I'm trying to do the same spiritual work that a coach does in a different way. And I totally respect and love that. And I'm like really trying to also learn about how they do things, right? But this is my way of doing it, right? Through the front end of party, alcohol, art, music. Whereas these are the things that in real life, in a, biologically trigger your senses. For sure. This is the easiest way to your heart. Let's put it that way, right? Because by the time I try to tell you and sell you on your back end of your mind and consciousness, I've probably lost half the audience, right? Right. But if I offer you this, your senses are already triggered,
For sure.
right? And they're already working. All I
sure.
need to do is to walk you through it in a way that you have consciousness about how this is being digested and going down and how your senses are being worked on, which I, again, do that in a very liberated model without forcing people through the experience, which is very important. You got to let people explore it with guidance themselves, because that's a different
So
influence.
is this kind of like your focus on some of the events that you have, is you bring people in and then you try to help garner that experience for them?
100%.
That's your focus.
100%. On the events, that's always been the case. Even in the product design,
For sure.
it's, you can see in every aspect of this can and what's in it.
For sure.
That's,
For
that's
sure. So
behind it.
so traveling, the experiences you had in traveling, you're able to kind of figure out a way to channel that into a product that then you could share with the world.
Yeah,
So yeah,
for an experience.
So would you say like Bootleggers, like your product that you're trying to give, your experience that you're trying to give to the
Bootleggers
world?
is the cherry on top, the final edition of this journey that was about this exactly, to provide that experience, to elevate and lift your soul and your existence for a better being, for a better feeling, for a better, more content lifestyle.
For sure.